All right, let's get started again here.
When I was coming up to doing all this research, it was the first thing that really stuck out that looked like science. And then I began to realize that the usage of the Hebrew words, the grammar, and the figures of speech especially, and even once in a while the manners and customs, that all plays to the imagery, because these people then don't know what we know today. So God had to show them a picture. And when Moses and the other prophets who wrote their books, when Moses wrote that verse and the verses, he was really trying to describe a visual image of what God was trying to tell him. And then, but it's most of this today, it's one thing that really got my attention starting back around that time 10 years ago, is that these things, these new scientific discoveries, like in quantum physics and biology and in several other fields, astronomy, astrophysics and whatnot, that has all just come about in the last maybe 30 or 40 years. Of course, we've had quantum physics and general relativity since Einstein, but that was, back then, it wasn't the topic that the public would really catch on to. They were into the fanaticism of it because Einstein was a cool guy. He talked about bending space and time, and I think people thought that was cool, but most of them did not understand it. But anyway, what just amazes me in general is that all that is just now starting to be known, and it's showing up in the Bible in this imagery. So if you didn't know the science, you wouldn't catch up on the imagery, because that's written from an ancient perspective where they don't think like we do. And I'm definitely not an expert on that part, but I can pick up on enough of it to make these connections. The Luke 24:29 is more about quantum physics, because what that led me to discover was that every born-again person is quantum entangled with his Holy Spirit. Christ's spiritual DNA is an integral part of that. So now the quantum field that's around DNA, that's not coming from me. That is the scientist, the biologist, and geneticists are saying that. In fact, within about 2010, I read that they come to the realization that quantum entanglement is 2/3 of the force that what holds DNA together. In other words, the chemical bonds in the molecule itself is not strong enough to allow the DNA to do what it does. But what Jesus was implying, or maybe even stating directly, when he said that ye shall be endued with power from on high, which is most of the time translated clothed. And so that is imagery. The clothed part is on the outside of the person. So, that's where you wear it. So whatever the Holy Spirit is, or what, it's on the outside. But because we know a lot about quantum physics and biology today, we can really make something out of that and put some pieces together. Well, there's your physical quantum field, which is what the geneticists and physicists are talking about. But then in the Bible, in Luke 24:29, they're applying that same imagery to the Holy Spirit. So that puts the two of them together, right. And that's just about a slam dunk for quantum entanglement. If you know what that is, it's going to blow your mind. That's a separate topic, which I'll handle at another time if you're interested in hearing about it. In fact, if I could only teach one topic, I think that would be it. because it would give the person a very clear view of what the Holy Spirit is and his relation to it, and also to Jesus Christ. So I've entitled that topic, Christ's Spiritual DNA and Our Quantum Connection. But tonight, and maybe perhaps another, like John wants me to continue, we're going into Genesis 1:1 here, the first biblical day. That's what tonight is about. But I'm so glad you're interested in that and curious about it. I figured one day somebody would be.
And I don't want to go too late, everyone, but ultimately, I was encouraging Arnold to put together a whole class on Genesis 1 of all the days and look at them from the scientific view. And he's only worked on the first two, basically, I think, right? And so when you get done, you'll have a class. So what I'm believing for is for you to finish your work and then go around and teach in different areas and teach this material. So go ahead and get started on and give us some more specifics on the first day. All right?
Okay. The next couple of paragraphs, I think you'll find an interesting concept, and that is that I believe, or I've observed, that most Christians think, when they think about Genesis chapter 1, that there's only one story. But there are at least two stories. The story I'm presenting part of tonight is called the Astrophysical Storyline, where I correlate known facts and events with the scriptures and how the Hebrew words, well, it's more, I guess it's more of how the translated English words relate to it, and, you know, and the imagery that's involved with it. But there's also Moses' point of view, and you don't need any science to research that. You can use that ancient Hebrew cosmology diagram and just look for the clues throughout the Bible, and it's in a lot of places. And I can do that too, but it won't, I don't think it'll have the same pizzazz as what I'm telling you about tonight, because it's all within the framework of the ancient understanding. So that leads me to think, and you've probably discovered this too, that there are certain verses, because of the way they're worded and where their context is, they can mean more than one thing in a different context and still not be contradicted. I find that fairly amazing, and God's very clever along that line. And I think the prophets and believers who wrote the Bible were very astute in discerning those images that God was giving. And that's why things are looking so very accurate when you try to correlate science with some of this. To get started here, there's two different stories. In fact, there may be three, so that could be developed later. Actually, I'd done some of this before John contacted me, but I expanded it after he did and kind of polished it up a little bit. So anyone reading this, it'll have a pretty good flow about it, but it could still be intense in some places just because of what the material is, you know, the astrophysics. So our modern knowledge of science and technology, I'm kind of reading this now, but most of what I've said tonight, I didn't read. I just kind of paraphrased and ad-libbed it. So I thought it might go a little smoother. It wouldn't sound so scripted.
You did a great job.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm more confident in the material than I am in my ability to present it. Anyhow, so we living today with all this science and technology at our disposal, causes us to think that the heavens and earth should be understood like the way the cosmologists, astronomers, quantum physicists, and a few others that are involved in this. And I think they're right. I think we should look at it that way. And we also have to examine the context that phrases like heavens and earth are in, as well as the words that are being used. Well, now, all right. Now, I personally believe that the universe could not have gotten started all by itself. I think something or God had to initiate it. He had to get things going. So even the scientists are not, they'll concede that this thing couldn't get started by itself. It had to have help. And like John tells us, it's a very intelligent design. So that's why I wanted to point out that there's more than one story being told in Genesis chapter 1. And I think it's important to be aware of that, because it could prevent us from going to dead ends and making unnecessary false assumptions. Okay, I mentioned Job 3, 9, and 10 are talking about the primordial stars in the cosmic dark ages. And that is the central focus of this particular topic. But I wanted to talk about what I mentioned so far to help lay a foundation and to give a base for what comes up next. Oh, and there's one thing I forgot to mention, that is the phrase, God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning. Is that just a statement of God getting started, or is it its own topic by itself? And thinking about that, my opinion is that it's both. It's both an opening statement and a topic all unto itself. Okay, I got a few interesting quotes from some people that might entertain you here. So, in regard to the moment of creation, which scientists, physicists call the Big Bang, there must have been physics already present that was necessary to get the universe started. And it's not just me that thinks that. There is a distinguished physicist named Paul Davies, and he wrote a book, God in the New Physics. Some of you may have heard of that. In the second chapter, entitled, Did God Create the Universe? Question, I think it seems that Davies is helping the reader to recognize that science by itself cannot explain the origin of the universe. I think that's a very good point to keep in mind. He continues to discuss that the current scientific data shows that the universe had a beginning and it is finite in extent. Then there's another mathematician named George Ellis. He is co-author with Stephen Hawking in a book called The Large Scale Structure of Space-Time. And I found this video on YouTube about 5 years ago. It just blew my mind what was said there. I mean, I was able to put some verses in the Bible with what they said there. And this is one of them right here. George Ellis says at the World Science Festival on a topic called Nothing, the Science of Emptiness, he says, all the apparatus of quantum field theory existed before space and time came into existence. There had to be rules for beginning. So I thought that was a very profound statement. And coming from somebody that we probably think of as an unbeliever, it's just really amazing, because that's what amazes me, that some of the scientists are unbelievers, but they are coming up with theories and data which the Bible can correlate with. I just don't know how else to explain it. Now, on the other hand, if someone like me cares about how the Bible's interpreted, we sometimes get encumbered by our pre-existing beliefs, and we want things to fit together a certain way, and it takes a little bit of discipline to be aware that, hey, this thing is, on my part, is just a belief. Where does it come from? What's it based on? But the people, some of the scientists that aren't believers, they don't have that problem so much, I think. They're not quite as encumbered by a predetermined set of beliefs. I don't know if George Ellis is one of them. Okay, one other thing we can say about Genesis 1:1 is that the actual content and scope of what God creating the heavens and the earth actually means may be difficult to ascertain. And the full scope is probably beyond our comprehension. So we must be prepared that we're not going to be able to understand it all. And so given that, along with the broadness that the wording of verse 1 represents, scientists do know some things following the Big Bang and can prove that it actually happened. That wasn't too well connected there, was it? Okay, now we're getting a little bit closer into the physics here. So according to astrophysicists, the Big Bang represents the beginning of the universe, or it's largely agreed on by most scientists that the Big Bang is the start of things, whatever it actually is. And so they view it, but they came up with it as a mathematical construction that's built upon things that they have observed from the cosmic microwave background. And then, of course, I think the Big Bang could be an event unto itself, but the astrophysicists can't accurately separate it from the inflationary period. And I'm about to get a little bit into that, and here's where a video would help. What I was going to do was give my, not interpretation, but discussion about it, trying to make it concise and as I could, and then I was going to show you the video that says the same thing, only you've got these wonderful animated pictures to look at of electrons and photons hitting each other, and about the high temperature and whatnot.
We could publish the video for you on the YouTube afterward. Okay, if you send the video to me, we can publish it. So go ahead and do your description.
Okay.
Assuming that we'll see the video later. Okay.
Okay. Well, so I would just say here, kind of on a philosophical note, that it might be more accurate to say that the Big Bang gave rise to the universe. It kind of was necessary to allow it to develop. So at that moment, there were no atoms. There was only a huge flash of light energy. And then a few minutes later, protons, electrons, and photons were formed. But now I haven't read or seen any video that specifically says that protons existed in the first few minutes. And so these particles, these protons and electrons, along with photons after the first few minutes, existed in a high energy plasma state. And plasma is the fourth state of matter. There's liquid, solid, and gas, and then higher than that is plasma. And it begins at around 50,000 degrees. lightning is almost like the poster child of plasma, because the lightning streak is extremely hot, and the photons, and then the electrons and protons momentarily get separated from the atom, so that they don't make an atom at that particular moment. But I thought I'd give you a down-home example of what was going on in the early time of the inflationary period. And I'm probably mention this again, that it seems, just putting these things together, that all of verse 1 it encompasses the inflationary period. Now, it's not clear whether dark matter and dark energy were present at the very beginning, the Big Bang, but they were present during most of the inflationary epoch. Now, on a kind of little bit different note about the Big Bang, you may have noticed or thought that the term Big Bang sounds really cheesy, and it has undertones of disrespect for describing the beginning of the universe, something that should be considered truly wonderful. But somehow the name stuck, and maybe the physicists allowed it because they wanted to put a simple face over something that was extremely complex. But I'm of the opinion that we may find later, after we learn more, that the secrets of the Big Bang may well be one of the holy grails of knowledge and understanding. I think that would be amazing if we could learn more about it. And so, those things being said, I'm aware that some people take issue with the concept of the Big Bang, but no one has ever been able to find another theory that accounts for the physical evidence that the physicists are looking at. And like I mentioned before, much of it seemed to have its foundation in how they did their calculations from what they learned from the initial blast of the cosmic microwave background. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue on. Oh yeah, let me finish that thought up. So personally, I don't have a problem with the Big Bang. Too many things fit together so well that scientists can't really see how it could be anything else. So my goal is to one day try to understand it as the scientists do, and that's probably not going to be easy. You have a lot of really super smart men working toward learning just that, and when they talk about it, it's not nearly as simple as what I'm telling you now. So, but I just want to say again that if you were one of those scientists knowing what they know, and you compare this with the Bible in the way that a theologian would know those verses in Hebrew, oh, it would just be overwhelming. It would be one big, huge synesis, because they would see how it fits together. And I'm just getting a little piece of it in what I'm sharing with you about it. Yeah, I think this might be a good one to close on. Another couple of paragraphs. Was the Big Bang an orderly event? And this is a philosophical comment. So I've observed over the years that a lot of people believe that the Big Bang was a chaotic event. And it seems that those who have this opinion think of it as an explosion, as if all this debris was ejected out in all different directions. So first of all, at the Big Bang, there were no atoms. There couldn't be any physical debris. There was only an intense blast of light energy. So it kind of, in the minds of some people, it brings up the question that God is a God of order, so the Big Bang is perceived as not orderly. So we have this big controversial issue. But I think, given the weight of the evidence that they found, that the Big Bang, regardless of what it sounds like by name, was an orderly event, because as those other two physicists have said that I gave quotes from, that does all this make the Big Bang an orderly event? So I'll just say in a word, yes. And the facts should speak for themselves, but there's still some degree of subjectivity for a lot of people, because, many people don't understand it all, even though you can look at the video and see what happened. That's still not quite enough for some, but I guess that's just the way it is. But now here's the lining at the end of the tunnel. For those who understand what's driving these cosmological events, then there is no doubt that a creator with intelligence of the highest degree had to set these events into motion. And if the Big Bang were not an orderly event, then planet Earth and all the life on it would not be here today. I'm not sure what you got planned, John, but we're at 9:31 right now. I don't think you wanted to go that late, did you?
No, we're going good. All right. So I trust that what Arnold has covered has got people thinking. All right. Very, very interesting stuff. And for any of you who are so inclined, if you want to collaborate with Arnold, ask him questions or bring up things that you have found, I highly encourage that. Arnold, you had given me a short paper that you had sent me on the first day. Would you mind if I gave that out to people?
You certainly can, but I think it'll be even better if you give out what I'm reading from now, what I've added on to, and
okay. All right.
because it's been kindly rearranged. I've tried to tell it in kind of a progression order, because if I'm going to make a correlation with science to the Bible, they're going to expect to see how this ties to a verse.
Right.
And so I have to put it together along how the verses play out. And I think people will grasp it faster.
Okay. So you have a new version of that document then, right?
Yes, it's about 12 type pages, and then there's about 3 pages of definitions and terms.
Cool.
For those who are interested, and then the sources that I'm using.
Okay.
Which is right now is only 4.
All right. So what we can do, I can help you make a PDF file of that material, and then we can distribute it with the recording on YouTube, because this is being recorded on Zoom, and I can edit the recording. So some of your longer pauses will take out, or some of your ums, because I do that with me. I edit it. And so we could even get rid of the dog barking. Okay. But anyway, that's funny. So, but we can edit it, and then we can distribute it with that document and along with those videos. Okay. And so that way people will be able to follow this up. What I'm interested in is you developing all the way through, so you have a finished product. And then if it's what the quality is that I'm hoping for, then we'll put the show on the road. All right.
Excellent.